So, first of all, I welcome all the participants in this session. And now we move on to the first presentation, that is by Dr. G. Virya Mavik, Assistant Professor of English, Kamla Institute of Technology and Science, present in the meeting.
Yes, sir. I'm present.
Okay, okay.
Okay, thank you,
So,
sir.
your topic is mother tongue impact on speaking English at engineering level, a case
Yes,
study. Hmm?
yes, yes, yes.
Okay, okay, okay. You can start. You can start your presentation.
Okay, sir. Before that, let me share my.
PPT.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good afternoon, all. My name is Dr. G. Vidyanak. I'm an assistant professor of English from Kamla Institute of Technology and Science, Hyderabad. It is in Telangana. And I welcome all the listeners to this session, and I'm very happy to be part of this. And my presentation topic is mother tongue impact on speaking English at engineering level, a case study. The reason behind choosing this topic is, as I teach in a rural area of Telangana, the learners are lacking in speaking English. And as we all know that English language plays vital role to communicate throughout the globe, and most of the MNC companies, multinational companies, are hiring the people, those who are good at communication and those who can perform spoken skills well. So as part of that, I just wanted to know at what level our students stand. So that is the reason behind choosing this topic. And as our most of the students are from remote areas of Telangana, as our college is located in rural area. And so before that, I have gone through these studies. So some of the studies I have gone through, and I referred them, and I did review of literature on this. As Shivers conducted a research into this issue, found that a high percentage, 88 of the participants, felt that mother tongue should be used in the English classes. Yeah, as well, we are also facing the same thing, that when we continue to teaching in English language, the learners are not able to follow as the learners from the cities or metropolitan cities. We are having both the learners as from the rural background and for those who are from the urban areas. And there one more study is that Ridha investigated the essay writing errors in English in the works of EFL learners and specified the errors committed by the Iraqi EFL learners, revealing that the major cause of the error is none other than L1 transfer. Yeah, everywhere in spoken English or in written English, the mother tongue is always inferring the learners, so that they are not able to communicate as like other learners. And some of the few studies I have mentioned here, I think, as I have given very less time, so let's see what is the significance of this study. As we all know that during campus placements, the recruiters conduct group discussions, interviews, and self-introductions, all those parts. As professional graduates, engineering graduates, we need to train our learners in communicating good communications, so that we have two kinds of labs. One is English language communication skills, another one is advanced English language communication skills lab. So in both labs, we train students to become a good communicator in English. And English language plays vital role in getting employment, as we all know. So here, students, those who come from the rural area, they are little bit lacking in communicating in English. And so as an English teacher, it made the researcher to think where the problem arises from the rural students for not getting into jobs. Yeah, when we see every year placements, the most of the rural students are not getting jobs, like whereas urban students are getting. So it is the main thing that we need to think as English teachers. So it is the main reason for choosing the particular topic. And it is found that many of the students who come from the rural areas are having mother tongue influence in communication. Not only in Telangana, I think in India ourselves we are having, mother tongue problem. And so based on the topic, I have, chosen these objectives. These are the objectives: to know reasons behind rural students lacking in communication in English. And another one is to train rural students to overcome mother tongue influence in speaking English. To apply suitable activities to enhance rural students' speaking skills in English. To know how language lab help rural students to enhance their speaking skills. So based on that, I have have some hypothesis. The mother tongue of the learner can have its impact on spoken or speaking English. If the students are trained to speak English language with suitable method and activities, can overcome the problem of mother tongue influence. As I have assumed that these are the two things we can do, and we can train them to overcome the mother tongue impact. And these are the research questions I have framed. What could be done to make rural area learners to overcome mother tongue influence? What kind of strategies can be applied to teach speaking skills to the rural learners? What kind of activities can enhance rural learners speaking skills? So these are the research question I have formulated, and I have designed the study as it is a case study. I have chosen 50 students, those who are doing their undergraduate BTech, I mean Bachelor of Technology. The students have used a questionnaire which is relating to collect the data relating to their language learning and socio-economical background, and the where they stay. All those kinds of information I have collected from the student questionnaire. Then I had personal interaction with the 50 students, individual interaction with the students, and I just tried to get more information relating to the what are the problems they are facing in learning or speaking English. Then keen observation on selected subjects while teaching and during interactions. Yeah. So the one more thing is I have had close observation with each and every student, even during the teaching. Teaching means in labs we have practices. So there also we had very close observation. Then participation of the students in language activities in the classroom. So I have observed what is the participations. Are they participating actively in the lab or not? And next, all the activities were observed and recorded for the further references. So these are the findings. Mother tongue influence on English pronunciation. As every student from this India we are facing, we are not able to pronounce the words as like native speakers. So this is the common problem for us. So if we can teach them like pronunciation and all, phonetics and all, it may help them to overcome the pronunciation problem that we could find. And the pronunciation of English words is difficult to the learners. Yeah, some of the words are creating some difficulty to the learners to pronounce them. And students' attitude, even though the students are having a positive attitude towards English and they are very enthusiastic to learn English, but whereas coming to the practice or in activities they are not able to. And then participation in relating activities, whatever the activities we conduct, group discussions, interviews, resume, all kind of presentations, they are able to take part. At some point of time they are failing to continue their conversation. Next, role of language laboratory. Yeah, language laboratory, we are having 2 laboratories. Both of the language laboratories help the learners to practice the pronunciation and do the presentations in front of their peers, means their classmates. They can do presentations. So we are mainly focusing on spoken English as well as to have a good writing skills also. So there are some of the implications I would like to suggest here. Individual counseling with students. Individual counseling will help the teacher to find out the learner's problems. See, this is the thing that the student should love the learners and should know what are the standard of the learners and what are the problems they are facing in learning English, so that the teacher will come to know what is the problem of the learner and he will try to rectify the problem. So the teacher should maintain individual portfolio for each student. Yeah, this is what we are maintaining. So we have 30 to 20 students for each teacher, and we will record all the information, whatever the recording there regarding their performances and all, and we try to help them in a where they are having some weakness in language learning. Students involvement in classroom activities. Yeah, we have to. The low proficiency students should be taken care while teaching. Yeah, this is the thing. We have to mainly focus on the learners, those who are lacking or having low proficiency. The teacher should have special care on the students who are lacking in language learning. The teacher should encourage students to take part in language activities. Yes, we have to concentrate on each and every students, and we have to make them to take part in the activities, whatever we conduct in the classroom. The activities would help the students to enhance their language skills and communication skills in English without any hesitation. Yeah, they have to lose the hesitation. They have to leave it. If they leave the hesitation, they will try to learn some things. Then use of authentic material. So here we can say that if we use in language teaching the local material, what are local availability of the material, or local or culturally related textbooks, if we use texts, that will help them to enjoy the learning, because every learner, they want to see themselves in the text. So if we can include the culturally related text, means local text, that will help them to
Sir,
enhance their.
hello, sir.
Yes,
Sir,
yes, sir.
please conclude your discussion because we have more participants, four
Here I
more,
have.
and we have to
Yes, yes.
some discussion also at the end of the paper.
Sure, sir. The present study was mainly carried out with the main aim, with aim to of knowing mother tongue influence of speaking English and communicating English. This is a case study to know mother tongue influence in learning English with reference to the engineering graduates. The implications above mentioned can be considered to provide better English education to the engineering students of rural area. Uh, it is believed that the assumptions and the hypotheses made by the researchers were met to this. And finally, with a quote, I'll close it. The secret of getting ahead is getting started, as Mark Twain said. So if we can, secret behind getting ahead means you need to start it. So if we can, start speaking English, we can be a master in that particular language. With this, I'll end. If any questions are there, I welcome.
Yes. So, any language, we have some methods in. Also, we have some methods, and when we are talking about rural area and urban area, so
Yes.
what method, according to you, will be adequate method in the rural areas for the rural students?
Yeah, I think that socio-cultural method will be the best one. Approach would be the best one, where we can include their culturally related text, and we can encourage them to go through the text, and they can also have some topics they can select, and they can speak on the particular topic, and they'll be very happy to see their own culture in that. So those socio-cultural approach will be the best one, I feel.
And you have also talked about advanced communication skill. What this term in advanced communication skill?
Yes. Actually, we are having at engineering graduates levels. We are having two kinds of laboratories. The first one is ELCS, means English language coming, where we teach basics things. So where we for third years we go to the advanced communication skills. There we will teach them to how to write email, and how to write resume, how to prepare cover letter, how to write resume, all those things, and how to take part in the group discussions. All those things we teach them in advanced communication skills as part of our JNTU syllabus.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much. It was a very nice paper. And now I
Thank you very
the
much.
second. Thank you, sir. The next participant is Dr. Ashtiaq Hussain, Assistant Professor, Department of History, Alia University, Kolkata. Yes,
Respected doc,
Dr. Hussain,
respected
please.
chair. Uh, okay, sir. I'm starting my presentation. Respected chairperson of the session, Dr. Dinesh Kumar, and dear friends, a very good afternoon to all of you. The topic of my presentation is the shrinking space for educational opportunities, Indian Muslim women in 19th century. As I'm myself is Ishtiyaq Hussain, assistant professor, Department of History. So this is the historical. This is the research which is related to the history. As far as 19th century is concerned, this century saw a very important transition of the political rule as Mughals were replaced by British formally. And as far as Muslims are concerned, they represented a state of despondency. They were politically uprooted, they were economically shattered, and they were culturally, their independence was culturally limited. Muslims before 19th century under the Mughal rules, they enjoyed the special privileges. But under the British rule, under the colonial rule, they found themselves in a very different position as British restricted their political as well as cultural independence. And there was a sense of political animosity also among the Muslims regarding the British, as they had overthrown them. So in this process of political animosity, there were several things that that developed among the Muslim, which impacted their education as well as several opportunities which they refused in relation to that animosity of the British. And this also impacted the position of the woman and the educational opportunities which British Empire in its wake offered. And few communities, other communities accepted those opportunities, but Muslims were reluctant to you know accept those opportunities, and it led to the shrinking space of for the educational opportunities of particularly Muslim women. There are several reasons which I have tried to point out through my research in this paper, that what became the reason that the women's empowerment or women's educational opportunities they shrank. The first important reason was the limited resources at the disposal of the Ashraf Muslim. As far as Muslim education is concerned, among the women, it was only prevalent, whether it was in Mughal Empire or in the 19th century, it was prevalent more or less within the urban middle class, which is called as Ashraf Muslims. So this after the Mughal Empire, decline of Mughal Empire, these Ashraf Muslims, these zamindars or landholders, they were economically shattered. Their lands were confiscated, and with their limited resource, they could not continue the education which was prevalent among the circles of women. Besides, there was also one second important reason was the debate around the nature of education after the coming of the British, as British introduced the Western education. But among the Muslim, there was the debate that whether it is the traditional education that is best suitable for the Muslim woman, or it is the modern education. Traditional education was prevailing in that particular sphere of traditional education. Religious books, Urdu and Persian books, and some Arabic books were being learned by the woman within the homehold circle. But then there are other reasons, that is uh, that growing conservatism of these social custom. There was social custom due to this ashrafization. There was conservatism developed out of political animosity. It is believed that the lives of the Indian Muslims, they divided their lives into two spheres, that has been called by the scholars as the world or spiritual dichotomy. That their world was divided into two halves or two parts. The first part was the worldly affairs, which includes political, economic, aspects. And in that sphere, in that particular sphere, the Muslims, they accepted the defeat at the British, at the hands of British. But as far as cultural or spiritual, sphere of life is concerned, they didn't accepted that defeat, and they tried to preserve their culture after losing the political independence. They tried to preserve their culture, and among the sphere of the culture, the woman was given the priority, as we also do in the present times. Women are always tried to be pampered, that it is considered as an important element of our culture. So this also became one of the reason, and it was also believed that modern education was will have an corrupt influences, and would call for the um, uh, immoral woman, and it would produce a class of immoral woman. As modern education was believed that it is devoid of the moral values, it is only the religion that prescribe or that promulgate or advocate, cultural values or moral values. Besides, there were also some other things. That is, one important thing was that these upper middle class didn't wanted to mix their girls with the lower classes, the girls of lower classes. As British introduced the modern education, there were the several lower class people who lower class also who got into the frames of education. And these Ashraf Muslims, they were reluctant to get their girls mixed up with the lower classes. Besides, it was also believed that going out for the modern education in the modern schools, it would also compromise the parda. To note one important thing is that parda was not prevalent along the religious line. It was not the Muslim observed parda. In 19th century, we find that the parda was a class, it continued on the class lines. The upper middle class or the upper class of both Hindus and Muslims, they observe parda, and lower classes didn't observe any sort of parda. So these were the few reasons. And besides, women was seen were having potentially corrupting influence on the men. So this woman was perceived as both symbolic of all that is wrong with their culture, and simultaneously woman was considered as that it is the only vehicle through which our cultural life should be improved. So their role was defined to a particular transmitting the culture. This was the only role that was prescribed for the woman. So these are the few reasons that I have um, tried to present in my thesis, that became responsible for the uh, women's shrinking space for the educational opportunities during the 19th century. And it was same thing that when Muslims tried to reform their own society after 1857, there was no political attempts from the Muslims to restore the Mughal Empire or to restore their political order. Whatever reformation took place, it was for the socio and religious reformation. And the men, whatever reformation men chooses, that reformation defined the character or defined the education of women. For example, if we see Deoban movement, it was a reformation movement. They sought to educate the woman in a traditional way, in a religious books and Persian things, all these traditional learning. And as far as Aligarh movement is concerned, we see that in the 20th century there was the beginning of in late 19th century, there was the beginning of modern education for women also. So it was upon the based on the needs of the men. The traditional reformers wanted the wives to be trained in the religious knowledge, so they preferred traditional knowledge. And the more modern reformers like the Sayyid Ahmad Khan and his companions, they need the wives, the modern educated wife. That's why they promoted the modern education. Thank you. That's all from my presentation.
Nice paper. So, in your paper, you have used one term, shrinking space. So,
Yes, sir.
what does this phrase, I can say, suggest?
The shrinking space suggests that before 19th century there was women were being educated. The urban middle class women were being educated within the traditional norms, and it was on the basis of state. The state sponsored education. Mughal rulers sponsored this state education. But when British came, they didn't support the traditional education. They came up with the concept of Western education, and these Ashraf Muslim, they tried to preserve their culture, and they try to preserve the woman's role as a transmitter of culture. Therefore they didn't accepted the Western education. But as far as traditional education is concerned, there was also a lull. There was the shrinking of that sphere also, because they were economically shattered. These Muslim landowners or zamindars, they didn't have enough economic resources. And in 1857, after that, even when they accepted, after a time they accepted the modern education, they only promoted their sons to get the modern education, as that so that they can avail the opportunities of the government jobs under the British government.
Okay, okay. Thank you, Dr. Hussain. The next participant, a PhD research scholar, Department of Social Studies, School for the Study of Culture, Central University of, I don't know this. Juvena is present in the meeting?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Oh, okay. You just start. Your topic is storytelling tradition of India and ethno.
Yeah. Sorry,
Okay.
Studies. Yeah. Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Respected Chairperson,
So
Dr. Dinesh.
you just take 4 minutes and have also more, two more participants.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
Start.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Respected Chairperson, Dr. Dinesh Kumar, sir, and other dignitaries. Good afternoon, all. So, my topic of presentation is storytelling tradition of India, an ethnographic study with special reference to the folktales of Kerala. So I have written the paper, but I can't read the whole paper. But some my methodologies, objectives, and hypothesis. Let me read some important areas from the paper. So you know the methods of humanities. The studies of humanities are different from the studies or the methods of natural sciences. So humanities, as we know, the academic discipline that study human culture, that is philosophy, history, classics, religion, language, and literature, and the arts. So I am not reading all the paper, but some of the aims, objectives, let me discuss with you. So my paper, the aims and objectives of my paper is to study the historical relevance of storytelling in India, or storytelling tradition of India, and apart from that, to study socio-cultural aspects of storytelling and the narratives, and to study and know the relevance of storytelling in contemporary cultural scenario, and to find out as story reference. I know that I can't read my paper, but some research questions from my paper is to examine the narratives or tales, folk tales, or folk literary tales with reference to the oral and written text, and to present an ethnographic study based on the oral and written narratives, that is stories and tales, and what are the roles of storytelling in the construction of knowledge and construction of cultural identities. And as we know that storytelling or narratives or stories that enrich the cultural moral values of society or the societal system, and to know, to find out the scopes of storytelling in a technologically advanced era, and what is the role of storytelling in the construction of, yeah, as I have mentioned earlier, cultural identity, and and also what is the relevance of storytelling in contemporary cultural scenario of India, and also apart from that, what are the historical and socio-cultural aspect of storytelling in Indian context. So as in my paper, I use a research methodology like the primary data they collected from the field, and also through the extensive field work, and during field work so much uh, questionnaires and schedules also applied, and observations, interviews, focus group interview, visual documentation methods also used to collect the primary data. So on the other hand, the whole study will be it is conducted and supported by the previous knowledge and available in the form of written text. One will be nowadays graphic narrations and animated stories, and many things are also available. See, our folk tales and some folk tales from our culture is represented as in the form of graphic narration or animated stories. So storytelling plays a significant role in the construction of knowledge and formation of cultural identities. And yeah, we know that from the ancient period itself, in Indian context, we have a strong storytelling tradition. So it is relevant in that matter. And as I think in future also, it will be the same. And to transform our moral values, to transform our cultural value systems, etc. This stories or narrations and especially folk tales has its own significance and relevance, and it acts an active what medium um, to convey the value system in Indian.
Hello, have you finished your presentation? Hello, Jovena, have you finished your presentation?
And we know that diversity lies at the core of what storytelling in Indian context. That means stories, myths, legends, folklore, folk tales, epics, different varieties of storytellings are there in Indian context. So in the case of Indian mythology, yeah.
Hello, Jovena, have you finished your presentation? I think some network problems are there. Okay, there is a heavy rain. Okay, no problem. We move on to the next participant, Manpreet Sharma, research scholar, Department of English, University of Jammu.
Hello,
Hello,
am I audible?
Manpreet Sharma is present.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
I'm present. Am I audible?
Yes, you are very much audible. And your topic is understanding illness narrative as the form of meaning making, a study of Anita Marjani's Dying to Be Me. That is the work that you
Right.
have taken.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank
okay.
you, sir.
You start with your
I
presentation.
feel esteemed chairperson, respected organizing team, and fellow participants. A very good afternoon to you all. Today, I'll be speaking on the topic understanding illness narratives as a form of meaning making, a study of Anita Bujari's Dying to Be Me. So, shall I begin?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you. So, Dying to Be Me is basically one of the autobiographies written by Anita Bujari, and it was first published in 2012 by Hay House Publishing House, and it was one of the bestseller for 2 weeks after its release. The book has been translated to many languages and has sold over 1 million copies worldwide. So we can just guess the popularity of this particular book. It has also garnered the attention of several Hollywood producers to be made into a full-length feature film also. Anita Mujani basically is a cancer survivor and narrator of this autopathography. On learning that she has terminal cancer of the abdomen, she realizes that now she has so far led a mediocre existence. Illness becomes for her the vantage point from where she reviews actually the emptiness of her hitherto life. In an effort to give meaning to what remains of her life, she quits her job and starts working for the welfare of terminally ill persons. Set amidst her psychological and social turmoil before and during her critical illness, this text actually unravels her actions, inactions, and eventually her pursuit of enlightenment. The book can be discerned as embracing Bildungsroman as well as convincing transformation, gratification, and self actualization of the author herself. It is a work that deals with and encompasses her intricate thought, psychological observation, and thought provoking analysis. The text unravels the typical behavior pattern of a dying woman and her psychological tussle with the daunting religious and cultural forces that tend to decimate her aspirations. Born to Indian parents in Singapore, Anita Murjani grew up at the intersection of multiple cultures that held distinct and often contradictory beliefs. Shortly after her birth, her family moved to Sri Lanka and then at age 2 moved to Hong Kong, where she and her older brother Anoop grew up. Murjani and her brother both studied in British school. As an ethnic minority in a majority British school, Murjani says she was often the victim of bullying and born into a traditional Hindu family living in Hong Kong. Anita Murjani spent her earliest years trying very hard to live up to both her family's and community's cultural and religious expectations of being Indian and Hindu. As she struggled to conform to traditional doctrine but fell short, Murjani thought that she had inherent flaws because she could never be the domesticated and subservient daughter or wife the community expected of her. Deep down inside, she had a relentless desire to break free from her traditional duties and follow her dreams. In part first of the book, Dying to Be Me, she explained how this conflict of cultures shaped her personality and fostered the fears that turned out to manifest a disease and her descent into the prison of cancer. She laments, and I quote her, "Why am I always different? Wherever I go, where do I belong? Why don't I feel like I belong anywhere? I desperately wanted to know." Unquote. Her fear, anxiety, and existential crisis are a result of multiple and complex social and psychological factors that I'll be discussing in the subsequent section. Prior to her diagnosis with lymphoma, a kind of cancer, Anita herself admits that one of the biggest fears in her life had been getting cancer. It seemed to be occurring with more frequency to people she knew. Anita Murjani illustrated her mental breakdown about the way she witnesses the death of her best friend Sori and her husband's brother-in-law because of the cancer. It was very shocking for Anita as both the persons were very close to her, and this instilled a sense of deep fear related to cancer in her. With time, this fear grew manifolded as Anita began to explore more about cancer, and a point came where she succumbed to this fear. This surrender to fear is evident when she writes, I quote Anita, She says, I began researching everything I could about cancer and its causes. Initially, I started doing this in the hope of helping because I wanted to be there for Sony to help her fight. But I found that the more I read about the disease, the more I was afraid of everything that could potentially cause it. I started to believe that everything created cancer: pesticides, microwaves, preservatives, genetically modified foods, air pollution, plastic food containers, mobile phones, and so on. This progressed until eventually I started to fear life itself. So, Anita's cancer, this disease, orchestrated her trauma and interferes her in developing her solid sense of self. It rampantly enlarges her stressful predicament and devastates her emotional state. The plot is made increasingly intricate owing to her psychological agony, morbid thoughts, and existential crisis until she recuperates from her deadly disease. The complexity of her thoughts underlies her own journey with her infirm body confronting not only the physical odds but also the social psychological torments. The complexity of her thoughts can be attributed to psychological factor termed as mortality salience, coined by Jeff Greenberg. Tom Sizanski et al. Refer this term mortality salience. They define it as a heightened state of awareness of one's eventual death, suggesting that it is a state of increased death thought accessibility. Examples of potential source of mortality salience include images of violence in the media, news of the death of an acquaintance, and driving past the remains of an animal, like that. So Greenberg et al. Further posit that people deal with this mortality salience by using various cognitive behavioral coping mechanisms that manage to lessen the thoughts related to death. Furthermore, if these thoughts are not checked, these are not well managed, what could happen? This may lead to a psychological condition called death anxiety, first referred to by Sigmund Freud as thanatophobia. In his seminal essay titled Thoughts for the Time on War and Death, published in 1915, Szymanski et al. Write that, and I quote them. They say that all individuals are confronted with death anxiety. Most develop adaptive coping modes that consist of denial-based strategies such as belief in personal omnipotence, acceptance of socially sanctioned religious beliefs that detoxify death, or personal efforts to overcome death through a wide variety of strategies that aim at achieving symbolic immortality. Social psychologist Halter conceptualized death anxiety as a multidimensional concept and offered 8 elements of death anxiety. So I would not go into the detail of those 8 elements of death anxiety. Just I would underline that the names of those 8 elements, that are: number one, fear of dying; number two, fear of premature death; number three, fear of death of significant others; phobic fear of death; fear of being destroyed; fear of the body after death; fear of unknown; and fear of the dead, in their famous research work, Multidimensional Treatment of Fear and Death. Anita Moorjani underwent all these fears as a consequence of her direct and indirect encounter with cancer. In the first part of the book, Anita confesses that because she thought she was a misfit in the socio-culture milieu in which she was residing, she had started to hate herself. She felt that she did not meet the expectations of her parents and her society, as she disliked visiting the temples and so on. These are some of the instances from the text which she discusses instilled in her as a fear of cancer. Due to her declining health, Anita also suffers due to her inherent rage, paranoia, and delusions and hallucinations. The book insinuates that her trauma or paranoia and the absence of identity is orchestrated by heterogeneous voices in her head. She encounters traumatic stress and her multifaceted experiences. In the autobiographical studies, understanding of any illness endows the character a therapeutic recuperation, and from this desperate agony and broader discernment of the phenomena of life processes is well heard. As Burjani is diagnosed with cancer, she prepares herself for self-exile and impending doom by marginalizing herself from the society. We go to the conclusory part of this section. Conclusion part of this section. This is suffering from any critical illness has a very devastating effect on an individual. It is not only the physical pain and deformities that torment the patient, but also the psychological pain, depression, and social stigma that accompany any critical illness. In our society, cancer is considered as a synonym of death, and those suffering from cancer are either sympathized upon or alienated from their social identity. So, this estrangement often leads to a sense of despair and identity crisis in the cancer patients, resulting in an emotional turmoil in physically afflicted body. Change in physical appearance, like weakness and loss of hair, further stigmatize the patient, resulting in their alienation and self estrangement. Anita Burjani, through her autopathography, highlights the issues faced by cancer patients and also suggests the better ways to cope post diagnosis. She suggests that maintaining self compassion and self esteem in wake of diagnosis with any terminal illness are the key factors to be socially and emotionally stable during the illness. Her autopathography is a sublime example of learning, instantiating what one should expect during the course of a critical illness. This autopathography not only acts as a therapeutic medium for Anita, but also enlightens the experts from the field of medicine and those from the palliative care about how to cater the needs of those suffering from illness. That's all from my side.
It was a very, you can say, well prepared paper, sir, and through the autobiographical mode of the paper, you have tried to focus on the, I can say, the problem faced by the author, you can say, herself, and congratulations for your presentation.
Thank
And
you,
the
sir.
next
Thank you.
next participant is Mr. MOR, research scholar, and I think it is a co-paper. Dr. P. Deepa, Assistant Professor of English, Narul Islam Center of Higher Education, Kamarkloi.
Warakoi.
MOR present in the conference.
Yes, yes, yes.
Your
Yes, I am present.
topic of your paper is a reflection of cultural clashes in
Culture
the
clash in the
novel of
novel
Mistress of
Mistress
Spices
of Spice
by
by Chitra
Chitra
Banjari.
Banerjee. Yes, yes. You start with your
Yes,
paper, sir.
yes, yes. Hello, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Anuar. I'm a research scholar from Noor Islam Center of Higher Education. And my research topic, a reflection of culture clash in the novel The Mistress of Spice by Chitra Banjari. The novel talk about the protagonist of the novel, Tilo. Then she's had the magic power over the spices. Using the spices, she helped the immigrants. This novel, the explain through through this contact with immigrants, which portray the conflicts the immigrants face in the foreign land. The conflicts like the food, the problem, the dresses, food, the cruel violence against the immigrants by native peoples. These are the problems which present experienced by the immigrants was plotted in the novel. The first we talk about the immigrants. The immigrants who immigrate from the other country to America for a better life. The even the even them even for their but even the even just for a better life and better society, they just escape from their trauma they face in their own country. Some of them just left their native country from to move to foreign country just to earn money and get to better life. Here the experience they face in the foreign land quoted in the novel. The immigrants, is the same way the foreigners in this novel, the Americans, they feel the immigrants they're stealing their job opportunities and they're just dominating their culture. They just feel that the immigrants they're just imposing the immigrants just dominating them in their own nature, their own country. They feel like the immigrants dominating them. So the clashes between the immigrants and the natives, it's unavoidable in that situation. First of all, the immigrants, experience of immigrants, they face the violence attitude by the native peoples. Therefore, one type of the experience the face of immigrants, and the second one is the childrens of immigrants. The people who immigrant from native to foreign country, they take their children with them. The children who face the problem more than their parents in the school or education institute, they face more troubles because of their appearance, and the problems they face because of their language. The immigrants face the communication also is difficult. For Americans, the English will more easy to talk, but for Indians, Indian children who immigrant from one country to India to America, they feel it's very hard for them to the fluent English. It's the appearance and the language problem. It's a great point. It's became the immigrant children became the central point for bullying, and they feel like alienated from their own, they alienated from the class, their own buddies who treat him very ill. Another problems about immigrants is the immigrant face problem between the immigrants. Here the rich, poor, each play an important role in that problem, because the rich people who treat the poor like slaves, like they not give any respect for their own people. The immigrants who have money and financially very strong, they treat the poor immigrants very low. And the next we talk about the first generation immigrants and second generation immigrants. When we in this novel, the first generation immigrants have more connection with their native language, native countries, native cultures. But when you come to the second generation, third generation immigrants, they have very less influence of the native culture. They have more influence of the culture they were live, and the culture of the modern, very modern. There became the clash between the elders and the younger generation. Next one, this now will talk about the the problems faced by the women in foreign Indian immigrants. Women face the problems in foreign land and their home. These are the problems, the clashes which discussed in the research topic. Thank you. Hello.
Have you completed your paper, sir?
Yes.
So you have what type of reflection is there, or what type of clashes are there in the novel, The Mistress of Spices?
There are clashes between the immigrants and the natives, and there are clashes between first generation, second generation, because among the traditional beliefs, and the clashes between the rich and poor. In the same community, there are clashes between rich and poor. These are the clashes we portrait in the novel.
It means the author has tried to project, you can say, every type of
the first half of the novel, excuse me, sir. The first half of the novel, which project the immigrants' problems and the life of immigrants, and each portrait in the novel first part will run like in the secular. It is secular from the mingling with the foreigners. It's run like a more concentration about the immigrants. But the second half and the last of the last part of the novel, which everyone between the immigrants and natives, they together join when it comes to a great disaster, then they built a city once again. The problems there is the clashes in the cultural clashes is highlighted in the first half. I just highlighted the cultural clashes only, but the novel which also portrayed about the union between the native and the immigrants. Thank you.
So the immigration of the individuals, it leads to some other aspects of diaspora also. Do you think that the aspect of diaspora is also presented by the author?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes. Yes, the
that's
diaspora influence also present in the novel.
okay.